Welcome to The Growth Project, a podcast brought to you by AMPLOS. Excited to be here in the studio with the squad this morning.
The whole squad.
The whole squad. Thank you, Dr. C over there. We got the whole squad, and that feels fitting given that we are trying to kind of pull things together here at the end of the year, and we know that our listeners are probably, if not yet, on a break. We kind of hope you'll be headed to one soon as December closes. And, you know, the topic we wanted to get into today that we think plenty of people are thinking about this time of year is how do you kind of close the year up well? And so for plenty of folks, one component of that tends to be getting into some reflection, assessment, review, whatever term you prefer there. But the idea is setting aside some time and some dedicated thought to dive in and understand, how'd you do this year? Like, how did it go, essentially? So, Milt, why do we really believe in the importance of people doing that?
You know, Drew, I'm going to start with a quote. I know people are shocked. You know, I think Socrates said, or Aristotle, the unexamined life is not worth living. And to me, why is it so important is if you don't, well, one, we don't start the year off probably with the right kind of goals and vision and game plans with intentional thought and action. We kind of let life dictate how we're going to live that year. And I think this is a year-end evaluation, really kind of sets the stage of answering some of these deep and meaningful questions. Who am I? What's important to me? What inspires me? What are the things I really want to accomplish? We talk about trying to help people live a life without regret. And part of this year-end review lets you take a deep dive in, hey, who have you always wanted to become? How do you want to show up at work and at home? What are the things that continue to inspire you, that allow you to be your best? How did you grow? What are the challenges you were able to overcome? And I think without that reflection, what I know to be true in all of our lives, we think it's a good idea, but we don't take action of it. And without the reflection, the expectations from a negative lens, what we see is a lot of people have a critical self-analysis without taking a deep dive, without thinking about how they grew or what was important or what did they accomplish. Most people feel like they're in survival mode and just getting by. And so we believe kind of taking this deep dive kind of really sets you up to really take ownership of your life. If you fell a little short, how do you adjust? How do you make a new plan for the next year?
Yeah, don't just turn the page on 2025 and get into 26 without thinking about some of these things. So we want to definitely spend some time and really put effort into how do we go about creating a good process for end-of-year reflection. Gabby, can you talk a little bit about, to help our listeners develop a framework, a set of categories? Like, how can people think about getting started with something like this?
Definitely. Well, let's start with a 3-part framework where we're going to look at the professional self, the personal self, and then integrating the two. Starting with the professional, we want to focus on 3 main categories when we're reflecting: your wins and your growth, the challenges maybe you encountered throughout the year, and then systems and sustainability. What habits worked for you? What systems maybe made your life easier or harder? And then when we look at the personal, again, giving you 3 key areas to focus on here within the personal reflection is your energy and well-being. You're going to have your identity, relationships, support that you received and support that you leaned on over the years. And then, of course, your big area, rest and well-being, recovery, enjoyment, and reflecting on those areas as well.
Yeah, what I really like about this format and process, starting like it starts with the good, you know, whether it's personal or professional. I think the brain is wired to kind of look at the bad. Mm-hmm. And so we want to start, and then, again, this is evaluation, not criticism. You know, criticism, anybody can be a critic. That stifles growth. It limits innovation. It limits creativity. Evaluation is a step back and separating kind of who you are somewhat from what you do. And so we can really look at what went well this year. What were some things in these key areas? And it has nothing to do, if you're looking to this, the personal or the professional has nothing to do with how much money you made, about whether you hit plan or how many wins you had. It's more about your growth. Mm-hmm. and opportunities for you to improve and take direction. So I really like this, that it separates kind of where we think about in the performance world around achieving our goal or hitting our plan or winning a game. To me, this is a much broader and deeper sense, which hopefully gives your life a little bit more purpose.
Yeah, so we've got professional, personal, and then Gabby, what's kind of the third part of the framework?
The third part is the integration piece and the holistic piece where you're looking at what was the theme of my year and what do I want the theme of my next year to be, things that maybe served you or didn't serve you throughout the year that either you need to get rid of going into the new year or bring with you. So it's really tying it all together.
And that's a big component, and we'll get into that in a little bit later on in our conversation today, but we've seen this plenty of times over the years where people who are maybe they're doing kind of a reflection assessment in the year, it's fantastic, but then the next step, right? And so taking what they come up with and figuring out what's the adjustment that I want to make, what's the difference, what am I going to change in an effort to make next year different and not, getting to the end of that year and having the same kind of things on my list. And that's not easy. That's tough. And we've seen many people over the years who have a hard time taking that next step. And we'll talk about some ideas for how you do that. So let's kind of launch into this a little bit, and maybe we begin on the professional side. And Gabby, do you want to give us some good example questions that people could really be thinking about?
Sure. Well, with wins, we'll start there. That was the first category, wins, accomplishments, growth. First thing you can ask yourself are, what are a couple things that, I professionally accomplished this year that I'm proud of? That would be the first. And then where did I show up that aligned with my values and my mission or my purpose? And then, of course, what can I do now that I couldn't a year ago?
I love that question.
Yeah.
I love that question right there. And I love the other one about how do I show up? We talk all the time. People don't really give that a whole lot of thought. But were you proud of how you showed up? And where were those moments where you showed up well and you were proud of how you showed up? And where were those moments where you didn't show up well? And what did you learn from those moments?
Mm-hmm. Okay, newest AMPLOS team member.
Put her on the spot.
Going on the spot.
Put her on the spot.
You're going on the spot here. So let's take this one, and would love to hear you talk about, how about a professional win?
Professional win, absolutely. Well, this is an easy one for me because this year has been full of what I would consider professional wins, and that I finished my PhD, so got my doctorate, which I've been
Dr. C.
years.
It's official.
Yeah, Dr. C is official, years in the making. So that was probably the biggest accomplishment of this year professionally. And then, of course, securing my job here at AMPLOS.
Yeah, hopefully that was going to be what I was like.
I was trying to set you up for that one, Gabby.
Yeah, no, it was right there. Couldn't have gotten here without the
we would
degree,
not expect you to rank that ahead of finishing the PhD. Fair enough. We know that's we've both done the same, and it was, although a long time ago, huge accomplishment for sure.
Big,
well done.
Next year, AMPLOS will
there
come
you
first.
go.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah. So, okay, Dr. Lowder.
That's a hard one, man. What is my biggest win professionally?
Or just a professional win.
A professional win. One, I think Gabby on the team, we've been talking about bringing in new talent, new ideas, having some diversity back on the team. And so that's a big win, trying to kind of get the right people on the bus. But to me, there's two things I think that I'm really happy that I haven't done in a long time. I think the physician well-being program, kind of kicking that start off with Bon Secours St. Francis here, is really an opportunity to hit a group of professionals that don't get a lot of help.
Yeah.
And then I think probably being able to kind of knock the dust off the parenting class of God does not care if your children like you, which I intentionally quit teaching when my kids became teenagers because I realized I didn't quite know what I was doing. But I've had a chance to bring that back out and teach that. And so those have been two things that I would consider wins.
That's cool. Yeah, and I think on the physician program, to me, is one of the best examples of why I think our work tends to feel so meaningful to us, is because think about how that's a program targeting people who are then going to impact so many people, right? So you think about the ripple effect. It's very similar to why we love working and investing in coaches, because then they go impact so many people.
Yes.
But any program that's pouring into the livelihood of physicians, it's just really, I think, neat and an example of how AMPLOS really attempts to help the helpers and affect people who are going to then go affect a bunch of others.
Well, I think it living according to our values, right? To kind of the thing we say all the time, if all we do is make you better for your work or for your sport, then we failed you. And so integrating kind of the be better, pursue better part, especially for a demographic that doesn't ask for a lot of help. They probably aren't, if I look at the fast forward as hey, what's the theme of the year? If you look in the medical profession, the common theme is burnout.
Yeah, for sure.
And so excited to have that opportunity. So thankful for our partners at St. Francis here to kind of kick that off and get going.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
How about you?
Yeah.
Oh, my biggest professional win this year feels like being in this office, honestly, given how my year started. And if you are an avid or even somewhat avid listener of the Growth Project, you know what I mean. But I spent the better part of the first 3 months of this year dealing with some really, really difficult vision problems, eye problems, and was not in any office for quite a while and unable to really see much at all. So
let me add that back to another professional win, because I think the 60 Days in the Dark series, I know you for a long time, and you are not maybe one to quickly share how you're thinking, how you're feeling, a willingness to be vulnerable. But for you to walk through that, let me be a part of that story and all of us, and to share that story, the impact that has made on people across you wouldn't believe how many people have told me what an impact they made in their life in terms of their struggle and their pain. And so to me, that's a huge professional win to get you to share your story and share your journey, because I know how difficult that was. But again, using your pain to inspire others and help others and to kind of clarify that purpose. So thank you for that. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And it's probably a good example too of just some of our fundamental things we believe in come to life. Is like, I was never trying for that to be a win.
Yeah.
It just, just trying to kind of honor the things that pop up in life. But yeah, I mean, the fact that I'm sitting at this mic doing this podcast with you guys feels like a massive win.
Yeah, you can see us,
and I can read the sheet in front of me, so I'll take it. I didn't really need any other wins this year.
You had some good ones, though.
But it's been a wild year.
You had some good ones.
Okay, so what's next, Gabby? Let's move into some other categories here, and as we kind of give people some ideas on how they can do this, we can continue to kind of share some of ours.
Yeah, well, let's move into the challenges that we've encountered and how to reflect on maybe decisions we made and trade-offs we had to make. The first question you can ask yourself is, what challenge stretched me the most this year? What hard decisions did I have to make? How did I make those decisions? How did my values play a role in my decision making? And then what did this season teach me about how I operate under pressure? How do I handle stress and hard times?
I think that one right there has been one that I've tried to be very mindful of in my own life. And also I've challenged a lot of the people I work with is to be mindful and aware of your reaction, your human reaction to stress. I know I'm not very aware of how my stress impacts me, which makes it difficult for me to be aware of how my stress impacts others. And so kind of giving yourself permission to be honest and think about, how do I react to stress? And with that, what I added, what does it feel like to work with me when I'm stressed? What does it feel like to be connected to me? I know we aren't the personal piece, but what's it feel like to be loved by me when I'm under stress?
Right.
And I think that question right there, if we could really get people to dive into that and be honest, it gives you a lot of opportunity for growth. Because a lot of times that's when you are not proud of how you show up. That's when you're inconsistent and you aren't living like the tyranny or the urgent and the pressure becomes too great for you to be at peace and content with who you are.
Right.
Yeah, I already answered my challenge. That was one and the same. My win and my challenge are kind of intertwined.
Yep.
But I think maybe just one quick thing to add here is that I think it would be healthy and helpful for our listeners as you think about what that challenge might be to maybe peel it back a little bit further and ask yourself, well, to what degree was I responsible for that? And sometimes we're very directly responsible and sometimes we aren't. But depending on the answer to that can be really informative of how you want to go forward. Because sometimes challenges pop up that are, like we always say, kind of uncontrollable. And then others are, because maybe I made a mistake, I made a bad decision, I delayed on doing something I should have done sooner, whatever it might be. But we want to be sure you get the absolute most out of that question.
Yeah, to me, that's when, the reaction, then the reflection now is, what was your response?
Right.
And so it's okay to have that human reaction, but what was your response to that challenge? What was your response to that pressure? What was your response to that demand? How do you take ownership, whether you created it, Drew, or whether for a lot of our people it was created for you?
Yeah.
How do we want to respond to that?
Okay, so we've got wins and growth. We've got challenges. What's a third possible place to go here, Gabby?
systems and sustainability, which me, I'm very type A, so I love reflecting on this piece.
systems,
I
huh?
love my systems.
Y'all sitting on the same
Yeah.
side.
You and Milt, the systems people.
Love
That's what they call me.
Love my habits, my routines. So, again, asking yourself, what are your habits? What are your routines that support, high performance? And where did structure help? Where did structure hinder? And that's where I think I have to spend a little bit more time in my reflections is how does structure hold me back? Getting too locked into your habits or routines. Too rigid maybe. And then also what is sustainable and worth carrying into next year?
Yeah. Well, I think, we could probably dive really deep on the habits and routine stuff on a personal level, but I think particularly at work,
yes,
an example that I would mention would be, I feel like it's pretty normal these days to hear people say something that goes like this: I really don't like meetings. I can't stand meetings. And, sometimes you can't do anything about that, right? Fair enough. That's going to happen. But as you start a new year, that tends to be a great time to maybe create some changes, run some experiments. If you want to change your routine, sometimes people are a little bit aversive to doing that. Run some experiments and just try some things. Cut some of your meetings in half, the length of your meeting, see how it goes. Maybe that is enough
or just
time.
change the whole dynamic of the meeting. I think a lot of times the illusion of it really being a meeting, what we see is a leader just he just informs or she just informs, and there's no dialogue, there's no conversation. The tyranny of the urgent, focuses on the meeting, and there's no long-term decision-making on strategy and vision, so they're unproductive and uninspiring.
Yeah. I mean, change the components of it, change the order of it, change who's responsible for what,
change how you show up.
Cut it in half, do it different, just experiment, run some experiments. And I think, when you get the idea, we try to kind of consider the idea of hey, let's try this. Normally people get behind that in a real favorable way of hey, let's go find out. And if ultimately what we find out is that we were already doing it the best way, then easy. You can just kind of, default back to that.
Yeah, and I think, back to self-reflection and self-awareness, maybe we aren't great at this. So if you're looking at your systems and habits and routines, it sometimes takes a change in the environment to create a change in the mindset. And so, invite other people along. It's hey, this didn't really work last year. Mm-hmm. We had 20 meetings and we solved 0 problems. We just talked about a lot of things. And so I think that's a great idea to look at because, Drew, how frustrated people get at meetings that we speak to and how much time do we waste?
Right.
Yeah.
We probably don't have that problem at AMPLOS a whole lot.
I don't think we're too meeting heavy, but maybe they are. I don't know.
No.
Okay. Well, what else? Any final thoughts on professional stuff before we kind of switch gears, Gabby?
I think that pretty much sums it up. If you hit on those 3 areas and just really dig into those reflective questions. Again, I think it's important to highlight that you're not just picking out what you did wrong that year necessarily or what didn't go well, but also reflect on what did go well. Even when you're thinking about the challenges and the decisions, how did you handle those productively versus unproductively? Mm-hmm. And getting both sides.
Again, these are ideas and suggestions for you to make your own. There may be a couple other criteria you can take a deeper dive, but we're just trying to give you a template and a platform to really ask what we think are meaningful questions in a time frame that doesn't overwhelm you.
Right.
All right, so let's get into some of the personal stuff. And, I'm going to toss this one to the expert in the room here on kind of the well-being and energy stuff. But what would be a good place to start, Gabby, if people are trying to kind of think about, all right, where am I in terms of how I manage my energy? I think about wellness wheel, which is a concept we've talked about a ton here. What would be a good starting point there?
I think the best starting point would be to look at that wellness wheel or something similar. And
so just when we're thinking about the wellness wheel, the dimensions we talk about, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, relational, and behavioral, just if somebody's never heard that concept before.
Yeah. And just ask yourself, how do I feel in each of these areas, in each piece of the pie here? I would even say rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. I feel very fulfilled and comfortable in this area versus 1 being I feel drained in this area, and get a visual representation of maybe how you're feeling and where you're lacking or where you need to pay more attention to get really more quantitative with how are we looking at these intangible aspects of our energy and our well-being. That would be the first point of reflection.
Yeah, it's interesting how much those numbers can affect a person. Just seeing them written down, as you said, that by quantifying it, what an impact that can have.
Yes.
In a good way.
Yeah. And then I think the second question to ask is, when did I feel most like myself? So at what point over the year did I feel authentic and genuine? And what was going on around those times? What were the factors at play within those dimensions of the wellness wheel? And when did I feel most depleted?
Yeah.
And gaining, knowledge and insight around what does drain you, what does deplete you, and either, emotionally, mentally, socially.
Yeah, I like to frame it, hey, when was I at my best?
Yeah.
Or what I've really tried to pay attention into my life, personally and professionally, is when was I inspired? I think those are questions that I would like. Not only when did I have the energy, when did I feel authentic and genuine, but when was I really at my best in these important dimensions? And then when was I inspired by the work that I did? Knowing that if I'm not inspired, nobody else will be.
Yeah, and the suggestion I would make for our listeners as you're thinking about maybe you're working around that wheel and you're taking Gabby's advice of giving yourself your 1 to 10, start really small with pick one.
Yeah.
Pick one. We see it pretty typically where people might see 2 or 3 things in their wheel and they don't feel great about it. And so then they're like, okay, I'm going to go really double down on this and this and this. And that isn't always the best plan. So we would just recommend maybe you can pick one area.
Yeah, and even again, back to starting, like there's probably an area you're doing pretty well. And so let's don't minimize that. When we bring this up, it's so easy to focus on what you're not doing, but there's probably at least one dimension that you're paying attention to that you're doing really well. So don't forget that either.
Right.
Okay, so we've got energy and well-being. Then we think about kind of the relationships and support systems. And then with that comes kind of this identity piece. And so I love this question of how did I grow this year?
Yeah.
And wow, I mean, there's so many directions you can take that. I also think that's a great question that as you try to answer that as an individual, ask some people around you as well to maybe contribute to that. And like, what do they see? What do they see? Because at minimum, you kind of hope that that they would endorse what you think you grew in.
They may not.
Yeah. They may not. You would hope that they would.
Yeah.
What would that one be for you, Gabby? An area where maybe you grew this year?
Gosh, an area where I grew this year. I think there's quite a few, but I guess if I had to pick one growth point, it would be being more open and maybe vulnerable in relationships, but in just, the professional setting too, being able to be open and getting to know all of you. I think that that's something that is a growth point for me, because in the past I am very introverted. I like to just kind of keep to myself, but I've made it a point, going from grad school to the real world, if you will. That's been an area that I've been trying to grow in, and hopefully my friends and peers would endorse that, but I'll have to check in with them and see.
Yeah, I haven't known you long, and I didn't know you prior, but to me, you can see the fruits of that.
Yeah.
You can see a little bit more comfort in vulnerability, which is how we've always tried to teach, a little bit more giving yourself permission to be human, and a willingness to invite others in, whether that's here in the office or on the podcast.
Yeah. Well, I think the podcast has helped a lot because it kind of forces me to get on a mic and open up a little bit. What about you, Milt?
I do this in stone. I don't. So what is my question?
Gabby just asked you.
How did you grow as a person this year?
How did I grow as a person? This is, I'll be completely honest, I think my mind is always where I should be better and could do better. People probably don't know that about me, but my mind's always thinking about where I am not enough, or where I didn't grow enough, or I'm not consistent enough. And so this is going to be a hard one to answer for me. How did I grow as a person? I think I've been a little bit more mindful of the stress that I've probably been under most of my life. And at least being able to communicate that a little bit better to my family, and being able to understand some of that irritation or tone of voice, that really is probably just more stress induced. And so being able to kind of sit with that, and this other question you have, we haven't talked about, is, hey, where did I need more support? And so being able just to kind of ask for some support more at home or with friends, and not being like, hey, I'm always the one that's giving help.
Yeah.
Being willing to receive some of that help.
I guess now it's my turn.
It's your turn, Drew.
Yeah, hit me under the gun when I was unprepared for it.
I know one that's on my mind, but I guess I'm a little afraid people might disagree with it. But that's okay. I'll just go with it, right? Because I do feel like this is the truth. I feel like I've grown in patience.
Yeah.
This year, when you spend when you can't drive for like 3 months, you better learn how to exercise some degree of patience. So, and I'm sure that the gains that I made in the patience category back at the first part of this year, some of that has been lost. I have no doubt, but I'm hoping that I've held on to enough so that the net is still a positive. Yeah. I'm hoping I'm a net positive on my patience capabilities.
And there's such the good and bad of life when you go through those events is life goes on. And this is another reason you need to reflect and evaluate, because where you were pretty much helpless and dependent on everybody forces you to be patient.
Yeah.
And as life picks back up with a sense of urgency, it's, can we pay attention to what we learned while we were there? And without reflection, I think that you just kind of can fall back into that same kind of rut.
Maybe the way I should be saying this is I'm not saying I'm now a patient person. I'm just more patient than I was.
Yeah. I think you and I are going to continuum. That's probably a growth area for me for 2026 and every year.
But I do think I'm further along than I started the year.
And that's
the win.
Progress is one of my favorite words, and it's hard to recognize, especially when you can be so mindful of how far you have to go.
Okay, so now this is your domain here on the rest, your research and your dissertation work and all that. Yeah. And then within this realm, I really like this question here is, what brought me joy that had nothing to do with productivity?
Yeah.
Ooh, why don't you start with that?
Yeah, you kick us off here.
What brought me joy? Maybe if I read it slower, I'll get more time to think about it, right? That had nothing to do with productivity. I immediately think about my kids in the many ways that they bring me joy. So, and man, gosh, there's countless examples of those, of seeing, Meg, my oldest, have a great first year of college. That brought me a lot of joy. Certainly had nothing to do with my productivity. Brought me a lot of joy to see my wife, Rachel, rally around behind me when I was going through all my eye stuff. Just certainly a strong reminder of I think just the power and strength of marriage, and even 2 decades plus into it. That brought me a lot of joy. And I could go on and on related to family, but I think a lot of family wins brought me joy this year.
Yeah.
Milt? We're going to go in reverse here. Milt, what brought you joy?
I think, if there's one thing that I think I do a decent job of, is just being mindful when things happen in my life or happen for others to which I didn't really deserve. And that kind of brings me joy. It kind of brings me to my faith, really thinking about opportunities and blessings, and being a partner in someone's growth, or a way to help minimize the pain. When you can't solve the problems, you can't heal them, you can't fix them, but I am thankful. It brings me joy that people trust me enough to invite me into those conversations. So that's something that I think about, watching your children grow and struggle and mature and respond. And then for me, it's what Millpine has really become. It's the one place in my life where I don't get in a hurry. There is some productivity. I love killing a tree, or I love working on the farm, or I love doing something, but it's the one place in my life right now where I don't get in a hurry. And it brings me great joy and renews and restores me when I'm out there, that I feel a sense of peace.
Yeah.
How about you?
Right on.
Well, for me, it was definitely a year where I had a couple of months where I was done with school and in between school and job, and I'm just really appreciative for those months because I got to spend a lot of time with my friends and my family, and traveling with my boyfriend. And I recognize that's not something you get a lot of the time.
Yeah, not anymore. You're
working not anymore.
No PTO.
Yeah,
no
but it was nice because I never took a gap year between any of my schooling. I went straight through, and getting that time to slow down, even though it did kill me a little bit on the inside. Every day I was like itching to do something, and still had part-time jobs and things, but it was just, looking back on it, I'm very appreciative of the time I got to spend slowing down and just being with family and friends. And it brought me a lot of joy this year.
Awesome.
That's a good one.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah, those don't come along too often.
No.
Yeah, and so you think about, in terms of the personal piece, that personal reflection of how you grew, the relationship and support you were able to invite in, and then what brings you rest and recovery and renewal and joy. Yeah. That kind of sets us up for a year of reflection and review, and kind of, hey, where do I want to go? Almost like we talked about for professional. What am I willing to give up? Mm-hmm. If this is me at my best, what am I willing to give up in 2026 to keep moving towards that? Yeah. Which kind of leads us into this last three, hey, how do I integrate this data, and how do I use this for future opportunities and future growth?
Yeah. So how do we move ahead? And I think the first thing you need to look at is what was the theme of your year? What kept showing up across work and life, the similarities and commonalities between the two? Anything?
Tough one.
Yeah.
I can drop my quote here that I really learned this year. This is another growth area. I was able to memorize some new quotes and verses. That's always a goal of mine. But this one from James Michener, and it really speaks to what we're about at AMPLOS. The master in the art of living makes little distinction between their work and their play, their labor and their leisure, their mind and their body, their information and recreation, their love and their religion. They hardly know which is which. They simply pursue their vision of excellence in all that they do, leaving others to decide whether they are working or playing. To them, they're always doing both. And so to me, I don't know if that is one word that sums up what I think my year was, but every time, a lot of the times when I start my morning, I'm looking in the mirror and I'm thinking the master in the art of living. Like, how am I going to show up at work? How am I going to show up at home? When am I at my best? And so that theme of what is my vision of excellence that I'm pursuing, and how do I become skilled in my work in that process? So to me, that's how I see the integration in my life. And so I know that's not one word, right. But that phrase, the master in the art of living, is something that I'm aspiring towards in my work and in my life and in my relationships.
Yeah, that's a great one. I think for me, it's been a year of letting go of control and learning to adapt. I spent 6 years in the same place doing pretty much the same things, same job, and moving. We moved twice in the span of a couple months, back to Mississippi and then back, and then now to Greenville. And there's a lot of stuff I could not control, and over the course of the year. And I think learning to be okay with that and not be so rigid has been really the theme of my year.
Awesome.
Less rigidity.
Awesome. I like it. Doc?
I don't know if I'm ready to answer this one, because it's a really good question, and I haven't done my version of this quite yet.
That is, we'll give a disclaimer. We have not answered these,
but I really do like the question and plan to answer it, but I don't think I don't have it yet. Yeah,
it is hard being put on the spot. We haven't really given our due diligence and time to this yet.
That's coming. I usually don't get that in until like nearly the end of December, but it's coming.
Okay. Well, we'll wait for it.
Let me off the hook on that if you don't mind. Yeah, fair enough. Okay. And then just as we kind of think about these final couple things related to integration and path forward, I like this question as well. Think about releasing and resetting of what am I leaving behind? And this would fall under probably a format that many people are familiar with, kind of the start, stop, continue. But this on the stop component there, what are you going to stop and leave behind? In other words, like, what are you going to give up and no longer do?
I think about it,
of
course, things that you're doing and things that you want to stop doing. I think it can also come down to relationships. What relationships maybe don't serve you or fit anymore. Friendships, it's a hard area to reflect on, but it has a lot of value. Yeah,
and to me, I think both those, but I would add to it, what pain have you been holding on to that you're finally going to release?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
What have you been holding on to that, especially the holidays sometimes brings out that pain, those reminders of loss in your life, the reminders of hurt in your life, the reminders of who you've lost in your life or things that have been done to you. And so to me, this is a chance to say, what am I finally going to choose? And I think you got to choose forgiveness, meaning I'm not going to let the thing I can't control me. And so many people get forgiveness confused that I have so many people like, well, I can't forgive them. Well, again, forgiveness is not for them.
Right.
Forgiveness releases you. And so, man, if there's one thing I would encourage, if you don't do anything else in this reflection, that one question could be what finally leads to freedom, because that forgiveness, when you choose forgiveness, that forgiveness is what really leads to freedom. And as Lewis Smead says, to forgive is to set a prisoner free and realize that the prisoner was you.
Yeah.
And so not only, hey, what am I willing to stop doing? What do I need to give up? What relationship do I need to give up? But to me, that emotional pain that you've been carrying, what would it look like if you were able to finally release that and forgive that, knowing it's not a one-time event,
Right.
But that would be a huge part of your step forward towards your growth.
Yeah, a lot of people just don't think about forgiveness in the way you just described, right? Which is normal. It's very normal, but it's a hugely important thing to do. Okay, so I know we need to kind of move toward wrapping up here and everything. And, just maybe a final thing would be, just as we talked about, okay, if you had to think about your year and a theme for your year, nothing wrong with also kind of looking down at the horizon and being like, what? Maybe you have a theme for the year upcoming. Maybe you want to choose a focus, a theme, whatever word you want to use there, to really set your sights on what's ahead. I think that's a great thing to do. And then it's fun to kind of look back on that word and everything.
And it also sets a stage for how we reflect on next year. How will you evaluate next year? Is like, where there is no vision, it says in Proverbs, the people will perish. And so kind of setting the stage for not only what do I want to accomplish, but who do I really want to become?
So just as we wrap up, just the two final things I would want to say is that, on the one hand, we've tried to give you an effective and concrete framework today. And at the same time, there's really no wrong way to do this. So you might have a process that you've run in the past and, great, keep doing that. Or maybe, there might be a little more of kind of a narrow or simple way you want to do it. That's all great. We just want to really encourage you to find the right way that works for you. And then my kind of final charge or challenge would be, try to fit this in before the year actually ends. And I've done it both ways. There have been years where, for whatever reason, I didn't really get this in before the clock struck midnight or whatever on the 31st. And it just feels different when you're doing it on the other side where you're already in the new year. I don't know, personally speaking, it just feels different. So challenge yourself, get it in before the year's over. Yeah. That's my final word.
I like that. I like the idea of moving away from a New Year's resolution and setting a New Year's reflection, right? And that sets you up for creating an effective resolution, but you can't create a resolution that you're going to remain accountable to if you haven't done the reflection, right? So I like what you said, doing it before the year ends definitely feels a little bit different. I know if I wait until the new year, feeling like I'm already behind.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially
like I'm behind. I hate feeling behind.
And so then that'll set you up for January. And I love kind of beginning with the end in mind, as you look on this reflection and think about, well, who do I really want to be? What do I really want to accomplish? And how would it look different? How would I feel differently if I really lived my life in 2026 with intentional thought and purpose around these questions? And so we get really excited about that and inspired. It's kind of why we get excited about helping you be better and pursue better. And so I've really enjoyed our conversation. I do think we could take a deeper dive. For our listeners, hopefully you'll see we'll have this handout ready for you to kind of walk through and print out and answer these questions and give us some feedback as you walk through what worked for you, what didn't work for you. If you have any questions, as you subscribe or like us, please pass those along to us. And, just my final thought, I guess this is coming out Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas to everybody. And we look forward to our next conversation.
Right on. Have a great Christmas. Thank you.
Merry Christmas.